Once again, happy Father's Day to all of you dads. You know, on Father's Day and Mother's Day, I don't always write a sermon that pertains to the holidays. But today, I wrote a sermon that would apply to both mothers and fathers, both men and women. You know, we've had several funerals or memorial services here lately. And when I sit down with the family before the service, I always ask them questions. I ask them, what specific things do you want me to say about that person? What was their favorite verse? Do you want to come and say anything about your family member? Maybe if it was a mother or father or whoever died. You know, sadly, sometimes the response from the adult children is, no, I better not say anything because I don't have anything good to say about my father. Oh, that just crushes me when I hear that. I'm so sad when adult children carry a burden and a grudge against their parents. Sometimes they carry those grudges for years and years after the parent is deceased. And that's a long time to be mad at someone. That's a long time to just be burning up with that kind of anger. It's like a smoldering fire that started before death and continues after death. It can continue for such a long time. And that can be a drain on your emotion. It can destroy you psychologically and physically as well, and spiritually. You're unable to grow spiritually if you're holding that kind of a grudge against your parents or any family member, but I'm going to talk specifically about parents. You know, it can just make you sick if you think about it. You know, when I sit to You know, a lot of times they don't have anything positive to say about their dad or their mom. And that is just horribly, horribly sad. Now, when you learn how to let go and forgive completely, those people will experience total inner freedom. You know, when the funeral or memorial service is over, then often I sit and think about how I would feel if my children grew up and I died and none of them had anything good to say about me. Oh, that's just horrifying. That really freaks me out. You know, I keep thinking about that because it seems like we've had so many funerals here lately that it's just been on my mind. You know, can you imagine it if my kid came up and said, oh, my mom stunk, or my dad's was horrible. I better not say anymore and just come back and sit down. I mean, that's kind of going over the top, but it really does make me wonder. I want our children to have good memories, good things to say about us. And I know everyone wants that because we're all human, right? We always say, you know, we are human, we do make mistakes, and yeah, we do, we're human. You know, I've said that a million times. But think about Jesus. We have made some really dumb and terrible mistakes with our children, right? Before we became Christians. But after we learned about Jesus and started coming to church and learned more and more and more about God's way, our parenting skills have improved too. And I think we should pat all of ourselves on the back for that. And our children will thank us because we have learned through the love of our Lord. And that love from our Father has helped us to become better parents. You know, imagine if we weren't Christians, if we didn't have any belief or any relationship with God, then how would we learn to become better parents? I think it would be a horrible hardship and a complete challenge. The Bible has so many stories and so many words of advice for how to become a good mother or a good father. And the key to all of that is forgiveness. Remember when Jesus was being crucified and he was on the cross? Do you remember his words? He said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Jesus asked God to forgive all of us because they didn't know what they were doing. He knew that the people didn't understand. They didn't know how to be good people. And that came from Luke chapter 23, verse 34. So now he says, Father, forgive them because they don't understand what they did. And we need to forgive our parents too, because they did not forgive what they did. We have to say, Father in heaven, forgive my dad, forgive my mom. They didn't realize that their behavior was not effective parenting. They didn't know that they were making mistakes. Please forgive them. It's hard for people to hear that. But some of us do hold on to our anger. We hold on to our bitterness. We hold on to the grudges that we have against our parents because they have made terrible mistakes with us. But we need to forgive. We need to move on so that we can become healthy and whole people and enjoy our lives. We can't enjoy ourselves fully if we've got that the past hanging in our minds. If we see something, it moves us right back to the past. If we smell something, it moves us right back to the past. Those things tie us to our parents' mistakes, and they do not allow us to move on. And those are the type of grudges that are passed on for generations to generations. It's a chain reaction. You know, it can be a cycle. We have to learn to let go of the past, forgive the past, and move on into our future. That's the only way to break that type of chain or that type of cycle. Now, it's, there's, in Samuel, I love the books of Samuel, the Bible, but there's one chapter in Samuel, chapter 12, where King David's brother raped his sister. One of the brothers was called Absalom, and he was infuriated that their half-brother had raped their sister. So he looked up to their dad to do something. He said, punish him. And King David did nothing at all. You always hear such good and great stories about King David. Well, now let me tell you, as a father, maybe not so good. He didn't do anything to punish that half-brother. And that was a horrible transgression. He should have had a huge consequence. He should have been in jail for life. But King David did nothing. So Absalom was infuriated, and he left and just kept thinking about what he was going to do. Now, you have to understand that David loved Absalom, but Absalom got so angry he just left his father. And then Absalom figured that David would decide to go ahead and punish that half-brother for raping his sister, but he didn't. So Absalom waited and waited and waited and said, okay, my dad is not going to do anything. So his anger was getting, and his hate for his father grew. He actually despised his father, King David, the most famous king of his time. And God loved King David, but now his son decided that he was going to kill his father and take over the throne. He planned and conspired to do that, and in the end, the son was killed because he planned to take the reign from his father. Can you imagine if Absalom had killed his father, and then it was time for the funeral? And he would get up there and he would say, you think my father was a great king, but I have to tell you, he may have been a great king and was well loved, but he was a horrible father. Absolutely horrible. He did not punish my half-brother when he raped my sister. He would just get out there and air all the dirty laundry. That would be horrible. When we die, we want our children to be able to say good things. I don't want people to die and then have nothing to say because they're filled with hate. that means someone has not forgiven or let go of the past. And if you hold on to those experiences, you will be emotionally and physically and mentally sick. That's a guarantee. Don't think that you're not sick. It's a guarantee that you will be if you hold on to those past experiences. Any unforgiveness leads to illness, whether it's emotional, spiritual, or physical, or all three. It's horrible and it's tragic. Now, David's son had a right to be mad, that's true, but he did not have the right to hold on to it. Some of us have good parents, they take care of us, and maybe they make a few little errors along the way. But some of us have horrible parents, horrible mothers. Some of us have been abused, and that's horrible. But that doesn't mean that we have to stay tied to that abusive situation or to that horrible experience. We need to learn how to forgive. You can forgive even when that person is not alive. Now, if your parents are still alive, but they won't meet you halfway and reconcile, you can still forgive them on your part. You can forgive, and just know that that person, whether it was your mother or your father who abused you, was ill. They were a victim of some type of disease or something that had happened to them. You can go ahead and forgive them. And if the person has already passed away, you can still forgive them and free yourself. Free yourselves. And know that in your heart that that was your mother or that was your father, and yes, they made a big mistake. They didn't take care of me properly, but they were victims of something. I may not even know what. Now, I've got some things for you to try and remember. Maybe you think, oh, this is ridiculous. I have never forgiven my mom. I have never forgiven my dad. I don't know what's in your private lives or what's in your hearts. But I do have 6 things for you to think about if you want to grow spiritually and if you're trying to clean up your physical health and your spiritual health, as well as your emotional health. We can clean up our health and we can improve, and our spirits, our psyches, and our physical bodies are all intertwined. They're all connected. And if we're sick in one area, we will be sick in all the others. So you may have noticed that your spiritual, emotional, psychological, and physical conditions will start to heal as you forgive. Little by little, you will start feeling very different. I can absolutely guarantee that. Now, remember, your mother and father are human, right? We wish that our parents were perfect and did absolutely everything right, but our parents are not perfect. They're not. Some parents are better than others. That's true. So remember this, and also remember that we are human as well, right? Some of us are already parents, and we will make mistakes, right? Yes? Oh, yes, we will. We will make mistakes. I've made many mistakes. When looking back, I just think, whoa, oh my gosh, what was I doing? You know, with all the children that I had and have adopted, you know, it's easier for me to have patience now, but early on, no, it was very easy to make mistakes as parents. And some of you who have become parents, it's fun to watch our children grow up and become parents, and then inside we can kind of chuckle and just say, when their children start to act up or start to talk back, then we can just kind of chuckle. Because it kind of feels good to see them, and then they realize that parenthood is not an easy job. So it's fun to see your own children become parents. We hope as parents that we don't make the same mistakes that our parents made. And And I hope that my children don't make the same mistakes that I made. You know, each generation improves. But it has to start with us letting go of the past and not dragging it into the future and passing it down to future generations. We've got to let go and get a fresh start and pass on positive traditions and positive heritages. The third thing I want you to remember is your parents' mistakes are more than likely the result of bad parenting that they experienced from their parents. That's very possible. Abuse. Parents who have been abused have a 50-50 chance of abusing their own children. A 50-50 chance. That's a lot. If you've got one of your two parents was abused and one was not, one was raised with love, there's still a 50-50 chance that that the children will follow the abusive parent. But there's also a 50-50 chance that they will follow the loving parent as well. Some parents have truly bad parenting experiences during their childhood. And you need to realize that, hey, you're a Christian, you follow God. And that you know about forgiveness. And can realize that my parents did hurt me, but I can see very clearly that my parents were ill. And what they had done was learned behavior from their parents, which was learned behavior from their parents. Maybe some of you have the same experience that my parents did. They learned some negative things from the school for the deaf that they were at during that era. They were so incredibly harsh with the children. And I'm not exaggerating. They couldn't have any dust anywhere. The bed sheets had to be military made. The clothes hamper could not have any clothing outside of the hamper. There were just so many things that they were strict with. And my parents picked that up from the school for the deaf, and then they imposed those same rules on us as children. And it was kind of scary, actually. You know, that era was so strict. Some say strict, I say it was abusive. Abusively strict. Some of us have those experiences, especially parents who grew up during that days. You know, my parents are, you know, that 69, the 60s, 70s era. And some of us, when we get together at the Deaf Club, would start talking and sharing experiences and finding out that, oh, we had similar experiences growing up with our parents because all of our parents had gone through the same schools for the deaf about that era. Now, we want our children to forgive us, right? We want as a parent, you want to be forgiven. Well, then we must learn how to forgive them. We can't not forgive and expect other people to forgive us. It just doesn't work that way. Forgiveness is a two-way street. It goes, we have to forgive the past and then forgive the future. Once the past is forgiven, then others can forgive us in the future. And it's not easy. You know, I don't know your situations, but I do know that sometimes the situations are not easy and that people struggle to forgive. And I would suggest that you go into counseling and let somebody help you learn to forgive. And then you can live the rest of your life healthy. Then you will have a license to expect people to forgive you from your mistakes and from my mistakes. Forgiveness is possible. It's very possible. Don't think it's impossible. It's very possible. No matter what has happened, it's very possible. Okay, our fifth thing to remember is when you forgive, then you will take the weight of the world off your shoulders. You will feel so good. You know, I've forgiven my past 110%. I don't even think about it anymore, at all. I have zero grudge from the past, and I feel so good. I've been able to move on and just enjoy my life. Now, our sixth thing is, and this is really important, this is key. You know, you hear people, and I used to say this too, even when I was preaching. People will say, you forgive, and that means, what does forgiveness mean? Come on, what do you think forgiveness means? It means to forget, right? And that's important. You can't say, oh, I forgive you, and then just keep bringing it up and say, I'll never forget. You know, I'll never forget what she did to me. You cannot do that. Some people say, oh, I've forgotten, but I don't trust you. But part of healing means that you put it out of your mind and move on. It doesn't mean that you have to forgive and then socialize with that person or stay in an ill relationship, but you can just forgive, move on, and don't think about it again. Don't forgive and then bring it up and revisit it over and over again, because that means that you're still ill inside. You've got to forgive and put it out of your mind and pray for them. Have mercy on them. You know, if you see a person making the same mistake over and over again, they need prayer help. They need prayer. You know, abusive people are their emotional vocabulary is limited, their physical needs will show, and you know that they need prayer. They need forgiveness, and you need to put it out of your mind and just pray for them. I mean, it's easy. Well, I take that back. It's not easy. It's a process, but it's a very doable process. It's very doable. You can forgive. You can then put that completely out of your mind and move on. That means you can have a different kind of life for you in your marriage and with your children and with everyone else that's in your life. So when you forgive and move on, and if an old memory tends to come back, pray about it and say, God, help me to put that out of my mind. And then one day you realize, hey, I haven't thought about this in a long, long time. And you'll feel good. Now here's our memory verse, you know. I usually don't ask you guys to memorize verses. That's not what I tend to do. You know, you don't have to memorize verses, and we're not going to slap your hands if you don't. Well, this is not the school for the deaf. My dad's got lots of stories about getting his hand slapped when he was a kid. But anyway, here's our memory verse for today. I would like you to remember this. Philippians 4, verse 13. It's an easy one to remember. It says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I can, say it with me now, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Some of you have signed this before. I know I can see some of you have committed it to heart. That verse helps me all the time. When I think that I can't forgive, when I think that I cannot move on, I just say this verse to myself over and over, because I never doubt his power. God's power is bigger than anything. Amen and amen.